Hello again, everyone. Vanessa Kelman here. Now, a few days ago, I had shared a little bit about the difference between being a pantser and a plotter or planner, and I explained how I was a pantser. So, I thought it might be a good idea to share a little bit more about what that meant. What is it like? What does it look like to be a pantser, right? How do I write, basically? So, if I were to actually show you what it looked like when I was writing, it would look a lot like this. In other words, it wouldn't be very exciting because most of what happens in my head, right? As I'm writing, as I'm typing, which is how I usually do it, though sometimes I do write with pencil on paper. If I were just to type or write, as I'm writing, I'm figuring things out. And I mean, even if you are a plotter or planner, there is a good amount of that too, right? Because being a writer is mostly living in your head. Your characters are living in your head, the story is living in your head. So there's not a lot that I can really show you. But I thought it might be a good idea to kind of explain the process and a little bit more about its ups and downs and what it means. Now, being a pantser does have its challenges. As much as I love it and as much as I love letting the characters and what they want and how they act lead me where I'm going, it does have its challenges. And I've been facing a lot of those challenges this week. Or this year rather. I will go more into that later this week. But when you have an outline, when you know what's coming next, when you know what the characters are supposed to be doing, then you can kind of work through writer's block, right? You know what's going to happen. And even if you have to change the wording later or move some things around, you know what's going to happen. And as long as you keep plugging along with your outline, you can kind of work through writer's block and eventually you'll come out the other side and be able to just keep going again. With a pantser, that is less of a possibility. Not saying it's impossible, because sometimes you'll have ideas of future scenes or future interactions, so you can kind of write what you think might happen later. There have been times those scenes have been completely thrown away, but at least it kind of gets the creative juices flowing again. But there's a lot more of, okay, I'm in this place. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm stuck. And that can pose a challenge. So, in general, when I am writing, I will pick up where I left off. Now, if I'm starting from scratch, if I'm starting at the very beginning, then I will usually have an idea of what the story is going to be about. So, I will start with one of the main characters, kind of give a little bit of background, not in the sense that this is who they are, this is why they got here, all of that, but more a snippet into their life. Like, where are they at this moment in time? And give you an idea of what their thoughts are, what they're thinking, what their day-to-day life looks like, or where they are in this moment, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're you know experiencing, in other words. So I'll kind of start in the middle of the story so that you can get a feel for what's going on. And then it goes from there. I try to think about, okay, if this is kind of where I'm thinking the story is heading, what can we do to get there? And so I will start thinking about, okay, the character is in this point here. Let's see, how are they thinking? How are they feeling? And it moves forward from there. So, just like in your regular everyday life, because you're the character of your own story, right? So, as you're in your own life, you can kind of be like, okay, if I do this, this is going to happen. You kind of plan ahead and think about things in general, how your actions are going to affect other people, how they're going to affect your own life. And I do the same kind of thing with my characters. So if they do this, what kind of result is it going to have? If they don't do this, what kind of result is going to have? And as long as it feels true to the character and true to the situation, there's a little wiggle room. I can kind of steer them in one way or the other. But there have been many times when I thought where the story was leading did not go that way because it did not feel true to the character. And that's really, to me, what being a pantser is about. Not trying to make your characters fit the mold, fit the outline, but letting them show you who they are and what they want and where they want to go. So when I'm writing, all of this is going through my head, right? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? What would be realistic to them? Because these characters are real to me. They have their own personalities, they have their own wants and needs, and they have their own struggles, they have their own challenges. So, what I'm writing has to feel authentic, has to feel like they are part of that character. So, as I'm writing, I will think about that. What is going to happen? That means that sometimes I can get stuck, right? Because I don't know what they would do. Or I'm kind of like in our own lives where we just are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And we're just like, I don't know what's best. I don't know what to do. I don't know how I feel about this. Or I am truly at a loss of how to fix this, how to solve this. And so I sometimes have the same struggles with my own characters. Now, fortunately, because this is a book and not real life, I can shift characters. I can go to a different character who's also going to be in this book and whose life will intertwine with my original character. But I can also, it kind of flips the perspective a bit, and sometimes going by that character and what they are doing and having an idea of how their lives are going to intertwine down the line, I can get myself back on track with the first character. And especially in my current series, Pine Valley, where I have a bunch of different characters who are involved because there's lots of town residents whose lives intertwine. Will sometimes go into a third character or a fourth character. Now, this doesn't mean that when I switch perspectives, that I don't know what's happening or that I'm stuck. Sometimes, but not always. um, but it can sometimes just shift that perspective enough where things make sense again, or things will work themselves out, where a solution will present itself thanks to this other character or thanks to that character's storyline. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Um, so it's challenging. There's a lot of balancing. There's a lot of thinking and processing and figuring out. But to me, that's the most exciting part is figuring out who your characters are, figuring out what they want to tell you and where their story will lead. And sometimes I know what's going to happen, and sometimes I know what the characters will do, and sometimes they surprise me because, like I said, these characters are real to me. They have their own distinct personalities and their own wants and needs. And sometimes they're like, no, Nessa, that is not what I would do or say. And this is actually what I want, or this is actually who I am. And so that can be fun. The story takes you in different directions, and you just never know where you'll end up. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. I hope that gave you a bit of insight into the life of a pantser. And I hope I didn't go in too many circles there, because I know that being a pantser is not a straight line. Unlike being, a plotter or planner where you have the key points that you need to go through, being a pantser can take you in all different directions, and you never know where you're going to stop along the way and how you're going to get where you ultimately need to be. But it keeps things interesting. It keeps life interesting, and I hope it keeps the books interesting. So that's about it for today. I will see you soon. Have a great day.